Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we're going to attempt to change the carburetor on the Bohlins 1253. Now that might sound relatively straightforward, but we've already had a couple of goes at it off camera, so just to make it more difficult we decided to film attempt number 3. The last time you will have seen this tractor was in our snow clearing equipment fitting video, where we put the Snowcaster on this tractor and our replica Bohlins HT snowplow on our Bohlins HT20. Now, in the comments section of that video we got a comment from Open Air Adventure, or Kenny, and he asked us, does the HT20 ever run smooth? And that's because in that video you could kind of hear it running a bit rough. And actually a couple of days after that video, when Dad was trying to use the tractor while I was at school, it was only running on one cylinder. So Dad did a bit of investigation and one of the spark plugs was pretty much dead. So when we were recording that snow clearance equipment fitting video, the spark plug must have been on the way out already. But since Dad has changed that and it runs smoothly again now. However, the second that was running right, this tractor went wrong. Now, a good few years ago, we bought a Bohlins G10, relatively local to us, and when we went and got it, we realised that it didn't have a carburetor or an air filter on it, which we didn't think much of because they're pretty easy parts to get hold of. So we got a new carburetor and air filter for it, fitted them to it, and it's been one of our most reliable tractors since. You may have seen it in a few videos, such as the dental show video with a sickle bar mower attached to it. So yeah, we've used that a lot. Then a few years later, we saw this tractor come up on eBay, and we bought this as well. And it's only when we went to collect it that we realised it was actually the same seller. And something else that we noticed is that the carburetor and air filter on this are painted black. Bohlins black. However, a Husky like this wouldn't have had a black carburetor and air filter. That is the colour that the air filter and carburetor of the G10 would have been. So we think these were nicked off of the G10 before we bought it, but it doesn't matter much either way because it's packed up now anyway. And we've got a replacement one which is made of high-grade Chinesium, which brings its own issues. Now at the start of this video we said that we'd already tried this multiple times, and I'll explain why while I'm undoing this air filter cover. And the first thing is that we couldn't get the bonnet open properly because it was fouling with part of the Snowcaster on here, which, having tried to do it without changing anything, we did take a bit of paint off of the bonnet, which we weren't too keen on. So for this attempt we've got a jack down there and we've kind of lifted the front end of the tractor up, which is very difficult when you've got an attachment on, but at the same time we didn't want to take it off, so that's what we had to do. That's kind of pivoted that downwards so we've got more space for the bonnet to open fully. And if the safety police are watching this, we do have a block of wood down there for safety just in case the jack fails. Now I've got this off. Now, there we are. And the next thing is that we noticed the fuel pump in there is actually threaded into the carburetor, whereas the port on our new 100% genuine Chinesium carburetor has a barb on there, which we did put this in the vise and try and take that out. We don't think it's threaded or anything, but we just couldn't get it out. And because we didn't want to risk damaging the carburetor, we've left that in there. I'm going to try and get around it by using this Pulse fuel pump which is actually the exact same thing as what we've put on that G10 we were talking about earlier that ran very reliably, or is still running very reliably. So hopefully this will help this be the same. And then we come to problem number 3, which is when you try and mount this new carburetor. Now I've got a nut here which is the right size to fit on there, and you may think, oh, that's snug, it fits perfectly, until you remember the fact that you've got to be able to turn that nut to tighten this up, which you can't do because of all that housing around the nut there. So what we're going to have to do is try and take away some of this material without going through into the carburetor chamber or damaging any other functional part of this, which may be difficult on this side. However, we can take a decent amount off of the top of there, we think, to get this spinning. So that should be the most difficult part of this, and at the end of it all we can award the tractor a new air filter at the same time. Given the problems, we thought we would come and have a look at our G10 that we've already done this kind of conversion, as it were, with. As you can see here, the fuel pump, that's where issue number 1 lies, in the fact that we put a 90-degree joint on here so that we could get all the fuel lines to line up properly. Don't think we have another one of them, but we'll have to have a look. Issue number 2 is the fact that we seem to have made an aluminium kind of spacer bracket thing to space the carburetor off of the engine. And we also appear to have taken the engine studs out and replaced them with screw-headed bolts, which, if we check against the correct size spanner for what we've got on the 1253, you can see they are smaller than the nuts that we're trying to use on the 1253, which is why we're having an issue trying to fit those onto the 1253, and we didn't have this issue with the G10 because obviously they're smaller kind of bolt heads. So we're going to have a look to see if we've got any of those bolts left over and have a think about how we want to attack this issue. We're back in the workshop now, and we couldn't find any nuts or bolts of a smaller size, really, which is slightly unhelpful, but we kind of knew there wouldn't be an easy way out of this one. So we're going to have to go back to our idea of taking material off of the new carburetor, but before we do any of that, we're just going to keep taking this apart and see where that takes us, and then work out where we'll go from there. We have the air filter backing plate off now, and you can kind of see the layout of everything a bit easier now. You've got the fuel pipe coming from the fuel tank here, the kind of vacuum pipe here going into the fuel pump, and then the fuel goes into the carburetor here. Then we've got the choke and throttle linkages up here too. You can see the 2 bolts or the 2 nuts that hold it on there and there. The one on this side is pretty easy to get to. For a 1/4 nut you need a 7/16 spanner. That goes on there nice and easily. However, on the other side is where we start to have issues, because you kind of have to put this behind the governor and the exhaust manifold and everything to even try and get that on the nut, which I've just miraculously managed to do there. And we've got a couple of different small 7/16 spanners with kind of slightly different angles on them to hopefully try and get that off. But what we will do is we'll disconnect all of the fuel lines, the linkages and the bolts, and come back to you once we have this off. We have the carburetor off now, and something that we've noticed is how badly damaged some of these these nuts are. You can see it almost looks like someone's hit that with a screwdriver or a chisel to try and get that off in the past from some of the marks on there. However, these do appear to have a 1/4 UNF thread in there, which means we don't think we have any replacements, so we'll have to use these again, unfortunately. But in future we would like to service and rebuild this old carburetor, seeing as it is an original one, as you can tell by the black paint and stuff like that. But what we think the issue might be with this is that someone's taken the main jet out in the past and stuffed it back in again. Now I have the manual up on the computer so I can show you why that is a problem. Now, as it says in the manual here, in this picture, the original main nozzle is meant to be a single-use thing, where once you take it out, you're not meant to be reusing it. You're meant to put in one of these, which is a service nozzle. The only difference between them is that there's an undercut groove there, and that's because there's a series of holes in the carburetor that the main nozzle lines up with, and the original one lines up with them perfectly. However, it's pretty much impossible to line them up after you've taken the original one out, so having a groove in the nozzle removes the need to line up those holes. So what we'll plan to do is take out the main nozzle, because we're assuming it's going to have one of these, and make that undercut groove ourselves in the lathe, because obviously we can't just call up Tecumseh or Boland's and ask them for a service nozzle. But hopefully that will get that original carburetor back kind of working again. But for the moment we need to use the new Chinese one, because obviously this is one of our snow clearing tractors for this year and we need to have it ready to go at any time. As you just saw in those clips, we've done the milling bits on here, and the casting wasn't straight in the first place, which doesn't help matters. However, if we put a nut on there now, in theory, at all angles it should fit. However, we have tried it on the tractor, and it just does not work in practice somehow. It must be very slightly off being able to work, but we think the difference is on this end, which we daren't take too much material off of, seeing as that goes through to the inside chamber of the carburetor, so we don't want to take too much off of that. So we've started exploring our other options. We did take the engine stud off one side, which has quarter UNF on the end that the nuts go on, and a quarter UNC thread going into the engine. So first of the things that we've ordered are some Allen bolts with a quarter UNC thread on them. The idea being that we will put one in this side, going straight into the engine, and you can get an Allen key straight in there to do it up, and there shouldn't be any issues with that, hopefully. And in that scenario we can hopefully get some new quarter UNF nuts to put one on this side, which is a mismatch of fixings, but at the same time that's probably the easiest way about it. We have ordered a couple of other things so that we can do different ways about it if we need to, such as getting some more of those quarter UNF nuts which go onto a 7/16 spanner, and possibly milling them down to fit a 3/8 spanner, which is what the G10 nuts fitted. Obviously that's a lot of work, so we'd prefer to do other options. We did also order some 3/8 hex shaped stock that we could also drill and tap and then cut down to make our own 3/8 spanner fit quarter UNC nuts. But obviously they are all options that require waiting for parts, which is what we're now going to have to do. So we've bolted the old carburetor on the tractor just in case we get some snow, and we will be back with you once we've got the parts. A week later now, and we haven't had any snow in the meantime, which means we didn't have to use the old carburetor on the 1253, but we are back and we have a few parts here ready to go. So we're going to go firstly with our Allen bolt fix, and we've got a good range of those there, and we've also got some new nuts there too. Now normally for Allen bolts we just use an Allen key set like this one, but it's pretty marginal as to whether they'll reach or not, which is why we bought or took the opportunity to buy these, which are a set of Allen keys from a company called Facom, which, if you haven't heard of Facom, they are a French brand that make some good quality tools. And they also bought out one of our favourite tool brands, Brittle, which was a shame because they then made it into their kind of secondary, lesser brand, rather than the very high quality brand that it used to be. But I'm not here to defame them. But Facom make very good tools, and we now have this set which allow you to access bolts at an angle due to the kind of notch taken out of the end there. Now with some of these parts here now, what we're going to do is mount the new carburettor onto the engine, which may sound like we're skipping ahead a bit, but then we've got the joys of the whole fuel pump thing to get onto, so we'll bolt that on and come back to you. We have the carburettor on now, and the Allen bolt works quite well on this side. We put a washer and a spring washer behind it, and that's all done up now. We probably could have gotten one in there, but it would have been a tiny bit tight with the Allen key, but it's something to think about in future possibly. Now we've got our fuel pump which we're going to put on. So we think that's going to go here. This port goes to the carburettor. First one here goes down to the vacuum on the engine there, and the one behind it goes to the tank. Now on the G10 we had a 90-degree bend here, but we don't have one of them, so we're going to have to try and make it work just going straight onto it, but hopefully that should be fine too. We've connected up all of the fuel hoses, and we've set this quite a way away from the carburettor so that we have some space for the backing plate to go on there, and so that all of those bits don't kind of foul each other. But what we will do before we put this on is put some fuel through it and see if we have any leaks. Now, as you saw from that video, it runs well now. We did spend quite a while trying to get the carburettor tweaked to run as well as you saw in that video, but it's all sorted now. You would hope that it would come with the factory settings on the carburettor, but clearly not. And we had no leaks with any of the fuel system stuff here, so that's all good too. Just something I'd quickly like to mention is the fact that at some point we'd like to replace these 3 spade connectors going into here with the actual plug that goes on there, which is the equivalent of 3 spade connectors, all in kind of a horizontal orientation. So we've struggled to find one of these for sale in the UK, but if anyone knows where we could get one of those, please do let us know in the comments section down below. That would help us out quite a bit. But now the only thing left to do is put on the air filter and air filter cover, and the old air filter looks pretty ratty and it's probably pretty old, so we're going to treat it to a brand new air filter here. So I'll just put that in there, grab the bolt and everything, and get this located. There we are. just do this up. And the carburetor rebuild or replacement on this tractor is now complete, and the 1253 is fully ready for its snow clearing duties now, and hopefully it'll continue to run just as well as it did in this video. But that's it for this video, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.